You are listening to The Pilgrim on the 405 with Will Christ. Join him as he and his guests discover how businesses thrive in California.
Well, welcome to The Pilgrim on the 405 on this beautiful sunshiny day. We have a great guest today, and a great guest who's working for a good friend of mine that I've known for at least 10 years. Nader Salesi and Scott Shadley are working on fascinating technology. And they're not the only ones who believe in it, because they've just gotten funded by a local Orange County VC to move forward. Now, Scott Shadley is the VP for marketing at NGD Systems, and he's in charge of marketing, product management, and product development for this computational storage strategy. And he's been a key figure in promoting computational storage, which he's going to tell us all about, this revolutionary technology, because he's working on a national level with setting standards and pulling people together who are working on computational storage. Before he was here, he was in Boise, Idaho, which is where he was born, right?
Yeah, born in eastern Idaho, but
and worked with Micron technology there. So welcome, Scott, to the Pilgrim on the 405.
Good morning, welcome. Pleasure to meet you. So
tell us a little bit about what you can tell us about NGD Systems and this computational strategy.
Absolutely. So it's interesting. We were having the prequel conversation about hardware is always overlooked and seldom actually paid attention to. So the group of guys that we have here, we're all based here in Irvine. We decided to take a look, rethink the strategy of storage and hardware in the way that it's used in today's data centers. Everybody's using it in the way of cloud with Microsoft Azure and AWS S3, things like that. But it's always been treated as somewhere to put something and to pull something from. So if you think about a storage locker, we all have one because it doesn't fit in our garage. We've already filled the garage, so we've gone to a storage locker because we're generating so much information, storing so many things. It's time that stored device or that place where you're storing the information is actually able to do something more for you. So we got together in 2013, so the company's been around just over 6 years, going into our 7th, and said, let's make storage smarter. And that's where this concept of computational storage came into play. So storage devices have to be able to manage your data, but historically they've never been able to manipulate your data in any way to make it more useful. And in today's day and environment, especially with the Internet of Things, 5G, autonomous cars, we're generating data at scales that we cannot even comprehend anymore. And we know that we want to store it, but we really don't want to do anything with it. We want the useful information or the value of that data to come out. And so what computational storage does is it allows you to process that data locally and provide that value back with limited external resources, lower power, things like that.
Well, now, when I looked at the website and took a look at this, what I began to think about is my storage unit. I live in Laguna.
Right.
And my storage unit is in Irvine. And so what I discovered from the computational storage strategy you're talking about is when I want to get something from my storage unit, I have to drive all the way to Irvine to get it.
Right.
That's a typical way today, isn't it, of dealing with it, because that processor takes a lot of time unless you have an enormous processor.
Exactly.
It's going to take a long time for that to come down or for that to get rendered. But what you're doing is taking the transport and moving it right into the storage platform. Right?
That's a very good way to look at it. So you can kind of think of it almost like a pyramid as well. The CPU sits at the top of the pyramid, the data is at the bottom of the pyramid, and it takes forever for all of that wide-based data to get through that single point at the top of the pyramid. The transportation of that information is significant, and the amount of data that you're trying to funnel through a single point in time or a single point in computer hardware is becoming astronomically hard to manage with new ways of looking at it.
And so what you're doing is moving the processor right onto the storage platform.
Exactly. So we're bringing the ability to look at that data and manage that data locally.
So it's almost like magically moving all of my storage unit to my backyard.
Exactly.
All right. Well, the second thing that I found was when I think about my storage unit, if there's one thing that I want over there, I have to go through everything to find it.
Yes, and even if you've indexed it, if you will, and you've got a record of where it's all at.
You're expecting way beyond my storage unit. I mean,
there you go.
Push it in. Maybe because of my wife, we have autumn and Christmas and Easter boxes,
exactly.
But the rest of it is just find a place for it.
Exactly.
And so what you've done by this moving the processor to the storage, you have actually been able to analyze and present that data much faster.
Exactly. That's a precise good way to look at it. It's being able to get what you really want out of the data you're generating back.
And in my case, with the storage units, there's not much in either that I really want.
Exactly. We generate so much information today in the digital world.
Yeah.
I mean, I remember back in the days of film camera, you'd get the picture set up and take one shot and pray and hope that when you develop it, it actually turned out, and you find out the one kid's got his finger up his nose or some weird thing like that. In today's world, we sit there and hit capture 1,000 times because we really don't care.
Somebody says to me, "Would you take a picture?"
Yeah,
and I go there and I take 5.
Yeah, exactly.
Right? And they say, "Oh, you took 5, right?"
Yeah.
But that's how we do it.
Right. And then the one that you really do care about is the only one you want to really keep or do something with.
You know what we do? We don't even bother. It's still there.
We don't bother to delete it because why bother? It's storage.
What's it cost? It'd take me more. There's more value in my time that I can spend someplace else than in going through and deleting all of these.
Exactly.
And so we wind up with this enormous overhead. And it's not a financial overhead so much as it's just an overhead of all of this storage requirement that's filled up all the time.
Exactly. And when you go to look at it from a processing perspective, keeping it in a kind of easy to understand terms, you have one processor, you may have 3 to 5 memory devices, and then you have 1,000 storage devices. Mm-hmm. To be able to look through 1,000 storage devices today, everything funnels through the 5 memory into the one CPU. Why not have 1,000 CPUs doing the work for you?
So how is that cost effective?
So when you look at it from the way we took a stab at it, there's this whole concept in the computer hardware world of accelerators and GPUs and things called FPGAs that do all this stuff outside of storage. We said take that compute resource and put it into an individualized component that manages both the data from what we classify as an SSD controller and CPU, and we put it into a single chip, and we actually manufactured an ASIC, which is, from a hardware perspective, sounds scary because there's a cost involved to do an ASIC, but at the same time, the team that we have here in Irvine was so efficient at what they did. It was once and done. We got it right the first time.
Well, that's wonderful, but it's not like you're taking a CPU from a MacBook and dropping it onto an SSD, an external SSD.
Right. We took what information or IP cores from ARM technology, because ARM's a big thing in the computer world right now. It's kind of starting to replace even Intel and AMD in servers and platforms. They have some really high-power CPUs in a very small form factor that fit into our device. And so we partnered with them to actually create this new idea.
And small form factor translates into low cost?
Yes, lower cost and ease of deployment.
Ah, well, that's wonderful. So we might wind up with hopefully small SSDs. I mean, they seem to be, my goodness, they can go down to the Apple store and buy a petabyte, right? For less than $300.
Yep.
I remember going down to one place down in San Juan Capistrano once, which was a music streaming, one of those very early music streaming things, and they took me back into this dark room, into this vault, and said, "Here is our petabyte server." Yeah. I was impressed, but now, my goodness, I can plug in a petabyte to my iPhone.
Pretty much, yeah. So the form factors, one of the key things about being able to get into a hardware deployable product is it has to be following the KISS principle. Keep it simple, stupid, right? Mm-hmm. So we didn't design something new in the way of a way to plug it in. We just designed a new way to manage the data. So it comes in all those standard form factors. We have things that are called an M.2, which started as a laptop and is now in the data centers. We have the standard hard drive shapes that we plug these products into, and those are how they're deployed today. So, yeah.
All right. Now you've been there from the beginning.
I joined in 2017 formally. I've known the guys from the start of the company.
So
we all worked together at a former
tell me how
OC
Nader
startup.
got from lighting to computerized storage.
Absolutely. So Nader is what I'd almost classify as a serial entrepreneur. He's always looking for the next best way to improve society in general, if you will. So I first met him in 2007 when I came down here to work for another startup that has since gone on to be acquired, STEC. And we designed together the world's first enterprise SSD product, which actually launched the whole concept of enterprise storage out of OC. I had the luxury of working with the whole team there from 2007 to 11. The company was sold off in, I think it was 2012. Nader and a couple of the co-founders, Vladimir and Richard, took an opportunity to take a stint at a career at Western Digital. And while they were there, they continued to evolve this ecosystem around storage and said, everybody wants it bigger, faster, stronger, but nobody's really thinking about how to marry other aspects of it together. So in 2013, WD decided to shift direction. They did their whole move with HGST and SanDisk and all those acquisitions, and the team had an opportunity to try something new.
And he said, we're going to take this stuff we've been working on with our garage, and
we're going to take what we've learned from customers and create a new solution that actually solves a real-world problem.
Excellent.
And so, from storage into lighting, back to storage, and now into compute with storage.
All right, so talk to me about marketing now. Is the product ready for prime time?
Yeah. So from a perspective of our solution, we started shipping product in late 2018, early 2019. We've got what classified in the market as proof of concepts. Lots of people playing with it, trying to figure out how to properly deploy it. With hardware, there's always this qualification cycle that takes place. They have to run it through all the paces, kind of like cars and that kind of stuff that you see running around as prototypes. We're starting to see those turn into actual production this year. So our product has been productized and ready for prime time end of last year. Now it's getting the customers' platforms we plug it into actually out into the prime time.
Customers' platforms. Are you selling it to somebody who's going to sell it to somebody else? Is this a wholesale play?
It's the way the storage products work in the SSD frame is I can go talk to an end customer and, like, say, for example, take a Macy's. I can go to sell into their data center group and say, you guys need this to work on all that customer data you're generating. They buy their storage platforms from someone like a Dell and HP or someone like that. So we would sell to them through those integrators. So it's kind of
they would
spec
spec it.
Correct.
They would spec it. So you're like a lighting company who is actually selling to the end user, but the end user has to spec that so that the architect is creating it.
Effectively, yeah. And that's just the way this particular market works and has worked for years.
Yeah.
So even when I was at Micron, same business model.
Yeah. I mean, you're not creating all the storage platform yourself,
right?
And including this in, you are actually generating product awareness in the end user customer who is going to upstream require it.
Exactly. And from my personal perspective, that's what I do as a marketing guy. Is my job is to make people aware of this technology, show them why it's of value to them, and then help them deploy it by working with the suppliers and things around it.
Now, is there any resistance from the suppliers?
There's always pushback from new technology development because it's like, well, we've always done it this way. Why do I do it that way? And how much work do I have to do to implement it?
Well, the real answer to that is because your customer is going to pay you for it.
Right. And so that's why we go talk to the end customers and pull them through those. So it's a push-pull model, and a lot of it's pull to start, and then it becomes a push later.
All right, so let's talk about marketing.
Yeah.
All right, so your ideal customer out there is a Macy's or what?
It could be anyone who generates lots of data. So it could be a retailer like Macy's. It could be a content delivery provider, say Disney Plus, the new guys, the Peacock platform coming out soon, Netflix. All those guys have massive amounts of content they need to redistribute, and we can support those. So that's content delivery market space. All the way up to like the Microsofts and Amazons. They have data centers and data centers of information.
Oh, so they are not your competitor. They are customers.
Yes. We enable their platforms to be more efficient and effective.
Oh, I was thinking that you were competing to make this a local storage up against AWS and et cetera, which would be cloud-based.
Yeah, so our products
cloud-based has to ultimately reside someplace.
Exactly. Everybody looks at the cloud as somewhere out. Again, it's back to it's still a physical hardware product that needs to be able to do something, and they can do it either from a use of how to better manage their customers' platforms or even offer it to their customers as a service, and those are the types of engagement models that we have.
Yeah, at a premium, of course.
Yeah, they like to charge premiums for things, of course.
Right. So you're actually talking to people who are streaming enormous amounts of data.
You can think of like Airbnb. Look at all of the images they have to capture, all the data they have to share. How often do they really need that information? And when they do, they want it there fast to their customer. Because you click on it, and if the picture doesn't load fast enough, you may move on to the next listing, and you've just lost a sale. Our ability to pre-fetch and pre-search and find that information faster in a localized environment is what provides these types of solutions.
So NASA?
Of course, they could be a player from that perspective too. We call them the 3-letter family, and in case of NASA, the 4-letter family. So we've got engagements that cover that as well. One of the unique things about our solution is we kept it local. So everything about our product is manufactured and made in the United States. So it gives us a lot of opportunity to play within the federal space. I don't see a red hat here. You have a red baseball cap that you wear? We did it before that came around. Thank you for that little segue. But our device is actually manufactured in New York. It's the only one that's made in the USA.
Where in New York?
There's an old IBM ASIC facility it's owned by Global Foundries. And Global Foundries is a key partner of ours. They've helped us invest in this technology.
What town in New York?
It's Rochester or White Clouds or something
so it's
like that.
very upstate New York.
Yeah, upstate New York.
Places that are struggling right now.
Yeah.
Excellent.
So we're helping support them from that perspective as well. And it allows us to have those federal engagements be much more friendly and able to support from that perspective.
Right. And so you didn't have to bring manufacturing back. Now, the lighting was done in China. When Nader was working with the lighting, that is manufactured in China.
Yeah.
So, in effect, what he's done is now focused on doing manufacturing in the United States with a different product.
Yeah, well, and exactly. And this is, I mean, the whole team has been in storage for decades. I mean, we've got thousands of man hours of storage experience. So it's a perfect solution for us, and the ability for a team the size that we are to produce a product that we have is second to none. So it's not. We're not looking to be the youngest or the biggest. We're looking to be the most efficient and most effective at what we do, because we just all love what we do.
So, competitors. Who is a competitor?
So in all new markets, you tend to not have direct competitors. We have what I'd classify as frenemies. So there's about 5 companies now that do products similar to ours. The largest of those is Samsung. So we are kind of taking on the head of the beast, if you will, from that perspective. From a perspective of which market segments we go in and go after, there's no one that's a direct competitor. We have just other companies doing similar products, and that's where the comment you made about getting into the standardization work is working with those guys actually collaboratively to design a way to make it easier for all of our products to be used by our customers. The markets, I mean, right now the storage market is at $1.7 trillion market this year. I'll take my 0.1% of that, I'd be just fine.
Do you foresee a time when I would be using your product on my MacBook Pro?
At that level, probably not anytime soon. The concept of what we do is around parallel and distributed, so you need more than a single device to make it most effective. So anywhere that you push something to a cloud, or if you're doing anything with your streaming information, those services would be run on our platform.
So I would benefit.
We're behind the scenes.
I would benefit from iCloud, from Apple using it.
Correct. Yes, we would make that much more efficient from that in certain ways, in different ways, depending on how you're using those technologies.
So let me ask a question. If Nader were here, I would be asking him this question. And so these are questions that I always find fascinating. Where would you see NGD 10 years from now?
I mean, there's 2 different ways you can take that and answer that question. One would be as part of another company that realizes the technology, so a merger, acquisition, M&A type of thing. The other is to grow it into its own holistic company and take it live and go public. Those are both viable at this point in time. I mean, they have their pros and cons of each. from a perspective of where I see NGD in 10 years, I see the technology that we've developed and are deploying today becoming the backbone of storage platforms around the world in data centers. Mm-hmm. Whether it's got NGD attached to it, another name, or how that works. One of the best things, for either as a marketing guy, a founder, an employee of a company like what we do, seeing it deployed in real-world environments at scale is just incredible. Mm-hmm. And I see the technology, whether it be our name or not, deployed in a very large scale in the next 10 years. So
we would know with Wikipedia where the technology came from.
Absolutely.
So all right. So the marketing strategy is identify these major players. How many are there out there on your list?
As far as consumers or players to help develop the technology space?
The people who would buy the technology itself. It's I guess the real question is how many companies out there are you actually looking at to generate interest in this and then upstream demand to their vendors?
Oh, yeah. Well, so from that perspective, we've always focused on three market segments. The hyperscale data centers, because we know that they need the technology and they have scale. So AWS, iCloud. Microsoft, Google, Apple. We call them the Big Eight. Mm-hmm. There's a fun little acronym for them. It's called GAMFA and BAT.
GAMFA.
Google, Apple, Facebook, Microsoft, Apple is GAMFA, and then BAT is Baidu, Alibaba, Tencent, and China. Uh-huh. So those are the 8 big guys that we could go after. There's a whole second tier behind them of 100 plus other companies that provide us all cloud services today. Equinix is another one of those. From a more content delivery side, so that all of the streaming services, we see this, there's streaming wars coming, mm-hmm. and they're all vying for your attention, mm-hmm. and how fast you can deliver the content to them is a key, and we help with that, so we reduce the latency. Mm-hmm. So name one of those kind of companies, Netflix, Peacock, whatever.
So we're up to about 50 right now.
Yeah, and then the next one would be, we've always said edge, because we can provide a lot of effort at this concept of the edge. So there's going to be a data center, like in this building, there's a data center that manages all of the networking and power here. That would be classified as an edge deployment. Those types of platforms are the next big thing for us, where we can take some significant drive and focus.
All right. So, the question is, so what? I'm curious, when you have 50 major players out there, mm-hmm. How many of those do you need to hit your financial goals?
It doesn't take a lot, especially as an early stage startup and revenue generating. We have lofty goals. I would love to supply all of them from that perspective.
Oh, of course.
But at the same time, we also have to be very critical of what we do. We need to pick the right first or second partners, get it out, prove it, and then there's a very fast follow in mm-hmm. this market space. So a lot of people are very shy to start, but once they see someone else do it, they want to take it on and say, yes, now I'm going to deploy it. So realistically, it takes 5 or 6 of those total companies across those different market segments to start that ball rolling. Mm-hmm. So we've been pushing it uphill, if you will, this whole time, getting mm-hmm. it to the point where we're going to get right to the crest of the hill. Mm-hmm. And as soon as those couple companies start going, it's going to go over the top of the hill, and it's just going to roll on itself on out.
Why should I use iCloud when AWS can do it in milliseconds faster?
Well, exactly. Or, look, these guys are doing something innovative. How did they do it? Oh, they need to talk to this company a la NGD to be able to replicate that similar type of environment.
That was written about the Wall Street traders who had to, they're doing everything they could to speed up the transmission from the Chicago market to. Did you remember that?
I know about that. Yeah,
but
exactly.
That's what you guys are doing, isn't it? I mean, if they had this before, they would have...
It provides an opportunity to do something people hadn't really thought. It's an outside-the-box thinking process.
Yeah.
Because in this market segment, there's this thing called disaggregation, pulling everything apart and trying to add just the elements you want. What we're doing is allowing you to do that in a more effective way.
So when you sit in your leadership team and they say, when? What do you think? Years? Months?
So 2018 was a breakout year with all of the development around the buzz of the technology, getting all the companies on board to talk about it with similar terms. Mm-hmm. 2019 was, I would classify the breakout year, where now it's a known quantity. in the market. Now, 2020, 2021 are where we see it actually deployed. So we're going to spend the majority of this year finishing quals, getting certain customers on initial production runs, and we'll see the ramps end of year into 21. And then mass market adoption could still be 3-5 years out.
So where's your manufacturing in terms of being able to meet the demand?
So we have an amazing operations team that's got things lined up to do low volume manufacturing local, higher volume around the state, valley, country. And then as needed, we've got mass production facilities available in lower cost regions like Taiwan and everywhere else. So it will scale very quickly. The team, when they were at STEC, basically found a way to optimize the just-in-time processing concept that came out of Japan. And it's been redeployed here, so it can be a couple hundred to a couple thousand to tens of thousands in a matter of weeks.
Well, it sounds to me like most of the people in the organization know exactly where they're going and how you're going to get there.
We all have a very good idea where we'd like to take it, where we see it going, and it's shown by the way that investors and customers have stood up behind it. So one of the more recent customers that we actually had in our most recent funding announcement was Booking.com. Small little company, based in Amsterdam, but has a footprint all over the globe right now, and they own their data. They have a lot of information they need to manage, and they look to us to help them with that.
Where do they store it?
In data centers all over the world.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
So there's not one central...
Their primary is in Amsterdam, and they actually ran into a unique problem in Amsterdam where the country has run out of power for data centers.
Oh!
So they can't build anything new. They can only update and augment. And so the ability, what we did from an NGD perspective, is provided them a very large capacity, very low power, compute-enabled device, which allowed them to reinvigorate the scale of that data center.
You know, that's very interesting. CTC Global does a similar thing for electrical transmission.
Yep.
Do you know them?
We're aware of who they are, and I keep my fingers in all the pies.
Well, JD was here with us on the show, and he showed me. I went over and visited the manufacturing plant. He showed me what they're doing. I mean, they in effect are able to double the volume of transmission using the same right-of-ways and the same towers. So, in effect, they're moving a lot more power through the same system, which sounds similar to you.
Yeah. We're reducing the amount of data moving through those same kind of lines is basically what we're doing.
Well,
but adding the value of lower power.
And what's interesting is that this is an environmental play without calling it an environmental play.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, we've had several customers that are looking at it just from a power savings perspective and said, I love what you're doing, and just the fact that you're cutting my power bill is worth every penny of whatever I have to pay for it.
So it's very interesting to me how multiple industries are reducing our draw on global resources without cutting back. In fact, they are increasing the power in this case, increasing the amount of data that's moving through it, but at a reduced draw on environmental resources.
Yeah, the kind of carbon neutral processes that people are looking towards and things like that.
You know, without standing up and claiming that.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't see a green flag flowing from your, flying over your office.
Maybe I should put one up.
Well, but I think that's the beauty of it, is that there's something going on in the process of life and social evolution that is allowing us, creating the possibility for us to reduce that draw on resources simply because of innovation.
Yes. And that's one of the things that's come up in a recent Harvard Business Review article was large companies have lost the ability to innovate, and if there weren't startups and other companies out there like NGD and CTC and whatnot that really think outside the box, we would stagnate everything that's going on, because good or bad bureaucracy, big scale, it is what it is type of mentalities have prevented that innovation. And so that's one thing that really drew me out of my big corporate world into the startup space was I really want to make a difference in a way that hasn't been thought of before.
Well, and I mean, go back 125 years. Every one of the big companies today, if they're still around, was a startup.
Yep,
right?
Exactly.
It was an innovative environment where they were not solving problems so much as providing new out-of-the-box solutions. I mean, we've only had electricity flowing around the country for less than 125 years.
Exactly. And the speed of innovation is increasing astronomically as we move forward.
And it is my experience is it is drawing less upon the resources around the globe.
Exactly. Like the whole electric car movement and how you're generating the electricity for the car versus producing the gas for them and things like that.
Yeah.
We even have plays in that space. For example, we're working with autonomous vehicle manufacturers to make the autonomous car consume less of its own electricity
and move and have
still
the data
process.
and the data faster.
Exactly.
Oh my goodness! Yeah.
How do you not hit something in the road that's there as an obstacle without having to use excessive resources to process that information? Process it locally in the trunk.
Yeah. And so to me, that's, there's been this counter argument over and over again about not just technology. Technology is one part of the innovative, entrepreneurial, creative mindset.
Yes.
Right? And to me, that goes all the way back 14.3 billion years, right? I mean, that first time that a helium and hydrogen atom got together. I mean, what's this?
Yeah, let's party.
The first time that galaxy exploded, and it's like, oh my gosh, this is the end of the world. But it turns out that out of that comes all of our all of the elements that make up you and me. So there's this counterfactual underlying that of process and belief that there's always a new, creative, entrepreneurial way of going about that. I mean, whether you agree with fracking or not, it wasn't that long ago when we thought we're at the end of oil. Right.
Exactly.
And it's certainly, we will never be, as a country, will never be self-sufficient in terms of fossil fuels. But where did this come from? Now here we, and so it's not that I'm in favor of fracking. What I'm in favor of is that continual experience of new, innovative, creative solutions, and you guys are providing solutions, and you didn't even aim at particular solutions that you're providing.
In a lot of ways, yeah, exactly. So we came up with a concept, and to be honest, we've had some doors opened up into some market segments. We're like, wow, that actually makes a lot of sense, and we hadn't necessarily put our mind to it, but just talking to customers, talking to people, they're like, could I do this with it? Oh, well, you know what? You could. Mm-hmm. And just that continual innovation with even these types of companies. I mean, I was on the phone with a very interesting telecom company, small guy, I won't give a name out, but they're a multi-billion-dollar company. And as a little startup, we walked into their innovation center. And we're like, we're here to show you some kind of innovation that we worked on. He's like, unless it's $1 billion business, I don't want to talk to you. And I'm like, what do you mean? He's like, we don't have the imagination as a multi-billion-dollar company to work on a program unless it's $1 billion or more.
Right.
And that it further proves that what we do is very vital, but it does take a lot of time in some cases to get certain people on board with it too.
Yeah, and to me, that is the cutting edge. It's not going to be big oil companies that help solve the problem.
No. It's people that look around it to see what you can do differently to accomplish an end goal in the same way.
Yeah, and so that's what's exciting about Orange County. Octane is one part of facilitating that, but ultimately it is the students who are coming out of our high schools, out of UCI, out of Chapman, out of all the colleges and universities in Orange County, and talking to Bill Carpu, if we can couple that with the financial resources from not just Orange County but from outside to bring it here, that that becomes the magic triangle of opportunity, experience, and financial capital.
Well, and the fact that you bring that's a very interesting point, because we've spent time working with the Octane team as well, but we publish regularly, at least once or twice a year, technical papers through PhD students at UCI. So we got a large number of interns from UCI and other schools that work on site, helping us develop our technology to help spur that innovation within the OC area. And having spent as much time in this industry as I have, and how much required trips to the Bay Area it has become, seeing the ability for tech startups and innovation down here is incredible.
Well, I want to pick up on what you were just talking about, because it seems to me that what you're doing is what all tech companies have the responsibility to do.
Yeah.
And that is to infect young people with the entrepreneurial virus.
Yes.
Right?
Bring them on board, let them do their thing, show them how it can be done, and say, hey, I've got this idea, and I know you're smarter than I am, so help me figure out how to solve it. Let's write a paper. Let's get it published. You get a degree. We get information. You've got a job. It's a great circle of life.
And you've got a job until something happens here, or you guys have a bigger idea that's going to pull you back into your garage.
Exactly.
But that's the infection that I think we really need to continue to spread in Orange County, because we are an entrepreneurial society.
Absolutely.
Here. And it's so clear that it's not about election, it's not about votes, it's about mindset.
Yes.
And when you see people saying we're being left behind, we have to grab what we have right now because there's not enough to go around. That's a very different mindset from the entrepreneurial mindset, which is more of abundance.
Yeah.
It's all out there. It's just a matter of how we spend our time and how we go about using an entrepreneurial system for managing the business.
Exactly. Yeah. And it's very key to just realize that you also have to bite off the right size of that success capability, because we know we could go huge, and I could hire 300 people, and I could just go astronomically large, but it may not go far enough by doing that. So you have to do it in the right steps and stages, and I think that's one thing that this team's done very well, has been very good about. We've got ways of getting there, like using the process of UCI and the intern process. It allows us the opportunity to get educational information in that we may not know, because I haven't been back to school in a decade plus, right?
Right.
But I get this information from the learnings from those guys that do that, and it allows us to turn that around into something we can deploy to customers. And I can't go after too many wide set of customers. I have to keep it focused enough to let it naturally
because
grow.
That's what I wanted to see was you have 50 or less that you are focusing on. And how many people, oh my goodness, how many times, oh my goodness, think about how big China is, and if I had one penny for everyone. Come on.
Exactly.
For most salespeople, it's helping them to focus on just the 30 who are absolute target markets that you're going to really get a decision from. Yeah. And that's what I hear you doing, which is certainly the way you go about it, because you're not going to lose focus on those 50 or the 30 or the 10.
Right. Everyone starts somewhere and starts it small and in the right direction. And the last thing that you want to do as a startup, especially in a space that we're in, is resetting the bar. You want to keep the bar set and not change it. And we've done a very good job of keeping that focus of the organization keen to exactly what we set out to do in the beginning.
And that's what, in terms of EOS, that's what I help companies do, is help them get really clear about where their 10-year target is. Yeah. And then, what does our 3-year picture look like? And get as specific, paint it in Technicolor. Yeah. What's that picture look like? Because so often, the visionaries have it in their head, and they think they've communicated it, but nobody really knows.
Right.
Until you can really make it very concrete. What is this going to look like? How many people are going to have here? What are our processes going to be? What's our volume going to be in terms of sales and profit and measurables? And getting really clear about that. Then, what's our plan for the next year?
Exactly.
And then, what are we going to do in the next 90 days to get there? And holding people, holding each other accountable, so we're learning how to actually get done what we said we would get done.
Exactly.
Yeah. So that's great. So talk to me about the next year.
So we're going to spend the rest of 2020 continuing to finalize those production quals, get stuff moving. So that the goal is to start generating the right levels of revenue that we don't need to look for more outside of just revenue generating, so kind of the break-even point concept. We're hoping that we can achieve that this year.
No hope. No hope. Abandon all hope on this show. There's no hope. You're either going to do it or you're not going to do it.
We're going to do it this year.
There you go. All
I
right.
like that.
Yeah.
We will do it this year. And then continue the work on the standardization front, for me especially, because the more flexibility we provide a customer, or the more ease of deployment we provide customers, the more the technology itself will take off.
Well, it seems to me that there's two things that you will get from the platform provider. I mean, I appreciate your strategy to get the end users to expect from the platform providers. But it seems to me that when you have 1, 2, or 3 of those, that what you can focus on then is their advertising about how they are unique from the other providers.
Right. We're definitely focused on an ecosystem enablement platform perspective. So I need partners, and I need to make sure that those partners have the enablement to drive.
I'm seeing 5G as the pattern for what you're introducing. Yep. One day I opened up my iPhone and it said 5GE, and I said, what is 5GE?
Right.
And nobody seems to know. It's simply coming from AT&T, and here is Verizon. We have the only real 5G. Come on. But that to me is what you are looking for from your users, right? This is what makes us different. Use us because.
Right.
And once you do that, like you said, it's everybody else is sitting there on your doorstep.
And then the technology and the capability to scale the technology is very vital too, because as you look at these things as they roll out, they need to be widely acceptable and easy to manage. And doing that and helping the ecosystem understand that, evangelizing. As a marketing guy, I'm on the road all the time talking to customers, enabling, encouraging, all that kind of good stuff.
So when will we hear the first couple of major wins?
We're going to likely close one by the end of this quarter, with another one followed in Q2.
Excellent. So, and how will we know that?
We'll be sure to let everyone know.
Oh, good. Excellent.
There'll be no shyness around highlighting that we got someone that's actually deployed a volume rollout.
Excellent. Well, we'll have to have you back when you do that.
Absolutely. Look forward to it.
Now, what would you say to all of those potential interns, all those young technology folks in what Octane calls the innovative ecology or ecosystem? What would you tell them?
Realistically, you got to keep it back to the very simple principle. There's no bad idea. There may be a wrong implementation, or you may be too early or too late to something. But always think about different ways to do something. The textbooks are great to tell you how something was done. That's not how it always has to be done. And that's exactly the premise of what we did. Is we took something that's always been that way and said, let's just tweak it just a little bit. So that's where the concept of innovation comes from. And it's not don't learn, but learn and find a better way to showcase how you can transform it into something new.
Excellent. Well, Scott, thank you for being here.
Absolutely.
If someone said that was inspiring, and I would like to participate in that wonderful experience at NGD, what would they do?
The easiest thing is to go to our website and reach out, ngdsystems.com. And if you want to find me, I'm on Twitter at smshadley. I'm always happy to talk to anybody who wants to, and lots of great information out there about our technology, highlights what we do with all of the education support and local support, things like that. So.
Tremendous. Well, thanks a lot for being with us and just showing us another way of how businesses thrive in California.
Absolutely.
You've been listening to The Pilgrim on the 405 with Will Christ.